What if I told you there are places on Earth where your biological clock ticks 3 times faster? Where 20 years of life turn into 60 in just 1 decade? Today we'll visit 13 such locations, from a village where the sun literally melts people to a city suffocating in sulfur fumes. But be sure to watch until the end. Number 13 is a place that is draining the life out of people right now, so you can use your smartphone. You can't even imagine the price they pay. Let's go. We'll start with a place so close to the sky that it begins to kill you from the first minute of your arrival. La Rinconada in the Peruvian Andes is the highest city in the world. Forget about clean mountain air and the romance of mountaineering. Imagine a chaotic settlement at an altitude of over 5,000 meters. This is higher than any point in Europe and almost at the level of Mount Everest's base camp. 50,000 people live here, and each of them is a living medical paradox. Why do people here age at an alarming, almost supernatural rate? The main enemy here is invisible. It's hypoxia. At this altitude, the air contains half as much oxygen as where you are now. Your body in La Rinconada goes into a state of permanent shock. Just so you can take a breath and take a step, your body activates emergency mode. It starts producing an excessive amount of red blood cells. Your blood becomes thick and viscous like cold maple syrup. Your heart turns into a worn-out pump that strains to push this heavy mass through narrowed vessels. Because of this, the faces of local residents often have a distinctive, frightening crimson or even dark purple hue. This is not a blush. It's blood literally suffocating under the skin, unable to be purified. But the real visible blow to appearance is dealt by the sun. At 5,000 meters, the atmosphere is so thin that it barely blocks aggressive ultraviolet radiation. The sun here doesn't just shine, it literally roasts living tissues through and through. Imagine being under a powerful industrial quartz lamp 24 hours a day. By the age of 20 to 25, the skin of young men and women turns into what doctors call chronic photoaging. Deep wrinkles like cracks in parched earth, which typically appear at 70, become the norm for youth here. The skin becomes rough, loses elasticity, and resembles old, poorly processed leather. Faces are covered with a network of burst capillaries, black pigment spots, and burns that never fully heal. Look closely at these faces on the screen. This man may be only 30, but his gaze and skin texture suggest he has lived 3 lives. But that's not all. La Rinconada is a city of gold. Local residents use mercury to purify it, burning it right in their shacks. Mercury vapors settle in the lungs, destroy the nervous system, and make the complexion earthy and teeth rotten. There is no sewage, no running water, only eternal cold and poisonous fog. People here don't just live. They slowly mummify alive. In La Rinconada, you will hardly meet lively, smiling elderly people. Few live to old age here. Those who have barely turned 40 look like emaciated old men whose bodies have simply given up under the burden of unbearable conditions. This place is a perfect example of how humans can adapt to anything. But the price of this adaptation is your beauty and youth, which burn out here faster than a match in an icy mountain wind. The International Space Station is a dream for millions, a symbol of progress, and the most expensive laboratory for studying the rapid destruction of the human body. Imagine you train for years, you are in perfect physical shape, but as soon as you leave the embrace of Earth's gravity, your body literally begins to fall apart at a speed that frightens even seasoned doctors. What happens to an astronaut's face in the first few weeks? In space, there is no gravity to pull blood and lymph down to the legs. As a result, all the fluid in your body rushes to your head. This is called the puffy face effect. The face becomes swollen, features blur, and eyes narrow. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. While your face looks like you've had a wild night, your legs turn into bird legs. They become thin as muscles and blood vessels atrophy from disuse. But the most terrifying things happen not outside, but inside. Let's talk about bones. In microgravity, your body decides it no longer needs a skeleton. In just 1 month on the ISS, an astronaut loses as much bone mass as an elderly woman with severe osteoporosis loses in a year. Your bones become porous and brittle, like sugar cubes. Essentially, in half a year of a mission, a person's skeleton can age by 20 or even 30 years. And this is not the kind of aging that can be hidden with cosmetics. When astronauts return to Earth, they often cannot stand on their feet. Their bones and muscles have simply forgotten how to support their own weight. But that's not all. Studies show that skin in space becomes thinner than parchment. It loses elasticity, dries out, and begins to peel at an incredible rate. Astronauts complain that their skin becomes as sensitive as a baby's, yet it looks flabby like that of a very old person. Now add cosmic radiation to this. On the ISS, you receive a radiation dose hundreds of times higher than on Earth. This radiation directly hits your cells, destroying DNA structure. Scientists studying twins, Scott and Mark Kelly, found that staying in space even changes the length of telomeres. These are the caps on our chromosomes that are responsible for biological age. Your heart also changes in space. It becomes more rounded and weaker because it no longer needs to pump blood against gravity. Blood vessels lose flexibility and become stiff, like those of patients with serious cardiovascular diseases. Essentially, a 6-month walk in orbit is an express course in aging for all body systems. You leave as a young hero, but return as a person whose internal organs and skin have experienced wear and tear equivalent to decades of earthly life. Space is beautiful in photos, but for our bodies, it's a zone of total biological regression. Imagine what it's like to look out the porthole at beautiful Earth and feel your bones turn to dust and your skin to dry paper. The Danakil Desert. This place is often called the planet's hellish kitchen or the gates to the underworld. And believe me, this is not an artistic exaggeration. Imagine a landscape that resembles the surface of a toxic Jovian moon more than our cozy Earth. Acidic lakes of fluorescent yellow, erupting geysers with boiling sulfur, and an average temperature that rarely drops below 35 degrees Celsius, regularly breaking the plus 50 degrees Celsius mark. But we are not here for beautiful Instagram views. We are here to see what this kitchen does to the human face and body. The Afar people live in Danakil, and for centuries they have been extracting salt in these inhuman conditions. And their appearance is the most honest indicator of how extreme heat and chemistry destroy youth. Look at a typical salt miner. This man may be 35 years old, but on his face you will see a map of suffering that a city dweller would not accumulate even by 80. How does this happen in Danakil? The aging process is essentially a process of accelerated mummification. Due to extreme dryness and heat, moisture leaves your body before you can take a sip of water. Constant dehydration is the main enemy of collagen and elastin. In these conditions, the skin loses its ability to regenerate. It doesn't just get covered in wrinkles, it literally cracks, turning into a tough, dry crust. Fine mimic wrinkles here turn into deep furrows in a couple of years, which remain on the face forever. The skin becomes incredibly dark, almost black, and acquires the texture of old parchment or dried wood. But the heat is only half the battle. The air here is saturated with sulfur fumes and other caustic gases from numerous volcanic fissures. Imagine breathing a light solution of acid 24 hours a day. This causes chronic inflammation of the mucous membranes and eyes, which makes the local residents' gaze seem eternally tired and cloudy with a red network of burst vessels. Teeth from constant contact with the aggressive environment and mineralized water decay already by youth, which visually instantly adds another decade to a person's age. Working in Danakil is a daily marathon for survival under the scorching sun without shade. The workers' bodies become extremely dry and lean. They have almost no subcutaneous fat, which makes their faces look like skulls covered in skin. This is the effect of a living mummy. You look at a person whose biological age should correspond to the prime of life, but see before you an emaciated old man whose cells have simply cooked in this natural cauldron. Danakil doesn't just steal your youth, it burns it out, leaving no chance even for the strongest. In this place, the phrase burnt out at work acquires its most horrifying and literal meaning. Now prepare for a story that will send shivers down your spine. We are heading to Sichuan province to a place called Yangtze. Outwardly, it's a very ordinary, quiet Chinese village, surrounded by mountains and fields. But once you step onto its streets, you'll feel like you've entered a parallel reality or the set of a grim fairy tale. The fact is that Yangtze is known worldwide as the village of dwarfs. And this is not just a nickname, it's a biological anomaly that scientists have been unable to unravel for almost a century. Imagine, in the middle of the last century, a strange, inexplicable disease swept through the village. Children aged 5 to 7 simply stopped growing. At one point, their bones froze and the biological clock of growth stopped forever. But the most terrifying thing is not this. While their bodies remained tiny, like those of first graders, their faces continued to age. Today, dozens of people live in the village whose height does not exceed 80 centimeters. But their skin is covered with deep wrinkles, their hair is gray, and their hands are gnarled, elderly palms of people who have lived a long and hard life. It's a sight that's impossible to forget. Before you stands a person the height of your child, but looking at you with the gaze of an 80-year-old. During the peak years of the anomaly, almost 40% of the villagers were affected by this ailment. Scientists from all over the world flocked to Yangtze, trying to understand what was wrong here. They checked everything, took samples of water, soil, and grains. One theory suggested that the soil had an extreme concentration of mercury or lead, which blocked the pituitary gland in children. Other researchers blamed radioactive gases emanating from a fault in the rocks. There was even a theory about black mold that affected rice supplies during one lean year, causing a massive hormonal imbalance in the growing generation. But none of these versions have been proven 100%. The villagers themselves believe in much darker things. Local legend says that a curse is to blame. Allegedly, many years ago, a resident caught and killed a black turtle, which was considered sacred. After that, the village was struck by the short legs disease. Others whisper about bad feng shui and the incorrect location of the ancestral cemetery. Be that as it may, for those born in Yangtze in those years, life turned into an eternal struggle. Imagine what it's like to possess the mind and experience of an adult man, but to be trapped in the body of a 7-year-old child, which moreover wears out and ages at a normal and sometimes accelerated rate. Now the anomaly is gradually receding. New generations of children are growing up normally, but those same little old people still walk the streets of Yangtze, living monuments to how one mysterious place on the map can completely break human biology. In Yangtze, you understand one important thing. Aging is not always about the numbers on your passport. It's when your body refuses to follow the rules of nature, turning your life into an endless, surreal nightmare. In this place, time doesn't just steal youth. It distorts the very concept of human development. Welcome to Linfen. For a long time, this city officially held the title of the most polluted place on the planet. Imagine a metropolis that is the coal heart of China. Here, the extraction and processing of fossil fuels are taken to the absolute extreme. But the price of this industrial might is the faces of millions of people who are literally covered with a coating of premature old age. It's hard to believe until you see it with your own eyes. In Linfen, you can hang clean white laundry on your balcony, and within an hour, it will turn completely black. Now, imagine what happens to your skin, which is the largest organ of your body and absorbs everything in the air. Local residents joke that in their city, the air can not only be inhaled, but also chewed. And this coal dust is the main enemy of your youth. Why do people age faster here? It's all about microscopic PM 2.5 particles. In Linfen, their concentration exceeds all conceivable WHO norms by tens of times. These particles are so small that they penetrate freely through pores deep into the dermis. There, they trigger a process that dermatologists call oxidative stress. Imagine that inside your cells, a micro explosion is constantly occurring, destroying collagen and elastin. These are the very proteins that make our skin firm and fresh. As a result, residents of Linfen by the age of 25 face the fact that their skin becomes flabby and lifeless. But there is also a purely visual, dirty effect of aging. The residents of this city have their own specific complexion, an earthy gray. Coal dust clogs pores so deeply that ordinary soap no longer removes it. This creates the effect of a constant shadow on the face, emphasizing even the smallest wrinkles and turning them into deep furrows. The face looks dirty and tired, even if the person has just woken up. Add to this the constant smog due to which people do not see direct sunlight for months. The lack of vitamin D makes the skin pale, thin, and translucent, through which veins show through, visually adding another 10 years to the real age. In Linfen, you will not see the healthy glow of the skin that we are used to. Here, people look as if they are eternally in twilight. The constant cold cough due to clogged lungs forces facial muscles to be in perpetual tension, forming specific wrinkles around the mouth and eyes, the so-called masks of exhaustion. When you look at a young worker from a local factory, it seems to you that you are looking at a person who has gone through decades of hard labor. This place is a clear example of how industrial progress can literally blacken human beauty, turning flourishing youth into a gray, dusty old age in just a few years of life in the shadow of coal heaps. Imagine the tropical island of Java, exotica, palm trees, eternal summer. Now forget about it, because we are heading to the banks of the Tataram River. Officially, it is the most polluted river in the world, but in reality, it's not a river. It's a flowing dump, a thick, poisonous soup of hundreds of types of toxic waste. It's impossible to believe until you see it with your own eyes. In some sections, no water is visible at all. The surface of the river is completely clogged with plastic and household waste, and underneath hides something much more terrifying. Along the banks of the Kitaram are more than 2,000 factories, mostly textile, and all of them have been dumping lead, mercury, arsenic, and tons of dyes into the water for decades. Have you ever wondered why fashion changes so quickly? The residents of Sitaram know the answer. They see how the color of their river changes depending on what color is trending this season. Today, the river can be poisonous pink and tomorrow acid blue. But for the 30 million people living in this basin, this is not just an ecological disaster. It is an environment that literally rewrites their biology. How does this place change appearance? Let's start with the skin. If you touch this water even once, you will feel it. Local residents are forced to use this water for everything. For washing, for bathing, and most terribly for irrigating rice fields. As a result, the skin of young people turns into something resembling reptile scales. Chronic dermatitis and fungal infections are common here, affecting every second person. Due to constant exposure to heavy metals, the skin becomes covered with dark spots, ulcers, and scars that never heal. By the age of 20, the hands and feet of young people look as if they belong to deeply elderly people suffering from rare skin diseases. These are not just wrinkles. This is chemical destruction of the epidermal structure. But the real horror is hidden inside. Arsenic and mercury, entering the body with water and food, affect the hormonal system. Studies show that children raised on the banks of the Kitaram have below normal intelligence quotients and slowed physical development, yet they age abnormally quickly externally. Due to hormonal imbalances, adolescents may experience early hair loss, an earthy, lifeless complexion, and specific puffiness characteristic of elderly people with kidney disease. You look at a 15-year-old teenager, but you see a person with a puffy face and dull, sparse hair whose eyes express the fatigue of the entire planet. Look at the shots where people on rafts collect plastic amidst this foul-smelling sludge. Their faces are the faces of people whose bodies are daily fighting a chemical attack. In Sitaram, aging is not a natural process. It is a process of gradual poisoning. Here, the concept of healthy skin is absent as a class. Heavy metals accumulate in hair and nails, making them brittle and deformed. This place is a terrifying reminder that we are what we drink. In Sitaram, people drink death itself, and it slowly, day by day, erases their youth, turning flourishing life into a chronic illness etched on their faces. Look at your smartphone, tablet, or laptop. For you, it's a symbol of comfort and connection to the world. But for thousands of people in the suburbs of Accra, the capital of Ghana, it's a death sentence for their youth. Welcome to Agbogbloshie. This place is officially called the Sodom and Gomorrah of the 21st century. It is the largest electronic waste dump in the world, where hundreds of thousands of tons of broken equipment from Europe and the USA are brought annually. But robots don't work here. People work here, their bodies literally falling apart before your eyes. Imagine a landscape, black, scorched earth where not a single blade of grass grows, and endless plumes of thick, greasy black smoke obscuring the horizon. Hundreds of teenagers and young people scurry in this smoke. Their job is to extract copper. The easiest way to do this is to burn the wire insulation. And this is where the real biological nightmare begins. Every time they inhale, they breathe in a cocktail of dioxins, furans, lead, cadmium, and mercury. Dioxins are some of the most terrifying poisons created by man. They are not excreted from the body. They accumulate in fatty tissue and begin a slow, systematic attack on your cells. Why do people in Agbogbloshie age at an incredible rate? In medicine, there is a term, oxidative burst. Toxic fumes trigger a cascade of reactions in the body that literally roast cells from the inside. The skin is the first to give up. 18-year-old boys who have been working on these fires for more than 2 years acquire a specific earthy gray or ashen complexion. It becomes lifeless, thin, and loses its ability to regenerate. Any scratch turns into a festering ulcer that takes months to heal, leaving behind rough, senile scars. But the most terrifying thing is their eyes. Look at the photos of these guys. Teenagers aged 14 to 15 have the gaze of deeply elderly people. Due to constant irritation from caustic smoke, the whites of their eyes turn yellow or murky brown, covered with a network of burst blood vessels. In medicine, this is called the old man's gaze, when in a young face you see the eyes of a person who has lived a century in suffering. But dioxins don't just affect appearance. They destroy the thyroid gland and liver, leading to hormonal chaos. Young people experience hair loss, brittle nails, and their bodies become either frighteningly emaciated or painfully swollen. The lead levels in their blood are tens of times higher than all permissible norms. This causes chronic anemia, due to which tissues do not receive oxygen. As a result, a person's face acquires that cadaverous hue that we are used to seeing only in deeply sick elderly people. In Agbogbloshie, the average life expectancy rarely exceeds 25 to 30 years. This is a place where you can see a 20-year-old man who looks 60. His back is bent, his hands tremble from heavy metal damage to the nervous system, and his face is a mask of soot, wrinkles, and chronic pain. This is the price of our technological progress. Here, youth doesn't just leave. It is sacrificed for a few kilograms of copper. The next time you replace your phone with a new model, remember Agbogbloshie. a place where human life burns in plastic flames faster than your battery charges. As a result, the boy is born with the external characteristics of a girl, and everyone, from doctors to parents, is sure that it is a baby girl. But nature takes its course later. When puberty sets in, at 12 years old, a second incredibly powerful surge of testosterone occurs. And that's when the body begins an emergency restructuring. Imagine the pace of these changes. This is the most radical and rapid body transformation that can be found in nature. Within months, the girl's breasts disappear, bone structure changes, the jaw becomes heavy and masculine. The skin, which was delicate and smooth, suddenly becomes rough, porous, and covered with coarse hair. For the body, this is an enormous stress. Imagine the load on all systems when the body tries to go through a decade of development in a year, which takes an ordinary person a decade. This is literally a biological explosion inside blood vessels and tissues. But the most surprising thing is how society itself in Salinas views this. Here, it is not considered a tragedy or a disgrace. In the village, there are 3 genders: men, women, and gevadochis. Most of these children, when they become adults, fully accept their male identity. They marry, work, and start families. However, such a sharp hormonal storm does not pass without leaving its mark on their appearance. Many of these men look older than their years. Their faces often bear the imprint of this heavy internal struggle of hormones, sharp, deep facial features, and a specific skin structure that seems too old for their age. Welcome to Varanasi, one of the oldest living cities on Earth, the spiritual heart of India, and a place called the main crematorium of humanity. Imagine a labyrinth of narrow streets where the air is so thick you can taste it, but it's not the smell of spices or street food. It's the smell of burning wood, mixed with the smell of burning human flesh. In Varanasi, death is not the end. It is an industry that operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without holidays or weekends. And this industry leaves an indelible mark on the faces of local residents. The main place here is the famous Ghats, the embankments of the Ganges, where hundreds of bodies are cremated daily on pyres. According to official data, the fire at Manikarnika Ghat has not extinguished for several thousand years. Now think about it. Every day between 200 and 300 bodies are cremated here. This means tons of combustion products, fat, proteins, bones, and hair, which turn into acrid, greasy smoke that covers the entire city. If you spend even a week here, you will notice how your skin changes color. It becomes gray, lifeless, as if covered with the thinnest layer of invisible dust. But for those who live here constantly, it's not just dust. It's a part of themselves. In medicine, there is no official term ash skin, but in Varanasi, you will see it vividly. Constant contact with protein decomposition products and soot causes the pores of residents to become clogged with organic residues. The skin stops breathing and acquires the texture of old, cracked parchment. Look at the local workers who tend the pyres. These men may be 25 to 30 years old, but their faces look as if they are carved from ancient stone. Deep, sooty wrinkles around the eyes, an earthy hue of the cheeks, and a specific smoky gaze are the result of years of inhaling their ancestors. Their lungs and blood vessels are clogged with microparticles of soot, causing chronic oxygen starvation of tissues. And as we already know, no oxygen, no youth. But Varanasi also affects the body in another way. The sacred Ganges River, in which residents perform ritual ablutions, is one of the most dangerous bodies of water in the world. The level of bacteria here exceeds the norm by thousands of times. The water contains remnants of unburnt bodies, household waste, and industrial poisons. When you regularly immerse yourself in such a cocktail, your skin is attacked by millions of pathogens. Young people often suffer from chronic eczema and fungal infections, which leave spots on the face and body resembling senile freckles. And we cannot forget about the famous sadhus and agori ascetics. The latter specifically rub their bodies with the ashes of cremated people, turning themselves into living dead. But even ordinary residents of the city involuntarily become part of this ritual. The constant sound of funeral bells, the sight of death at every step, and the heavy ecology create an atmosphere of eternal stress. Scientists have proven that cortisol, the stress hormone, is the main catalyst for aging. In Varanasi, this hormone is off the charts. Here, you age not only externally, but also spiritually, being permeated by the atmosphere of decay. You look at a 20-year-old guy on the banks of the Ganges and see in his eyes the wisdom and fatigue of a 90-year-old man. In Varanasi, time does not flow. It burns in ritual fires along with your youth, leaving behind only ashes on your wrinkles. If you thought hell was something from religious books, then you've simply never been to the east of Java Island. Welcome to the Aegean volcano crater. This place looks fantastic. A bright turquoise lake, which is actually a huge reservoir of concentrated sulfuric and hydrochloric acid, and the famous blue flames burning liquid selenium. Thousands of tourists flock here for impressive shots, but behind them unfolds one of the cruelest dramas of our time. Here work people called sulfur miners, and their appearance is the price for every gram of yellow crystals that will later end up in your cosmetics or matches. Imagine your typical workday, and now replace the office with the maw of an active volcano and the air conditioner with thick clouds of poisonous gas. Aegean miners work inside the crater without any protection. At best, they have a wet cloth over their mouths. Every day, they inhale sulfur dioxide, which, upon contact with mucous membranes, turns into sulfuric acid. Literally, they breathe acid. Look at their teeth. This is the first thing that catches the eye. Young men, not even 30, have teeth that look like they've been doused with acid. They are yellow, crumbling, and often completely missing. Poisonous fumes simply dissolve tooth enamel and gums in a matter of years. But teeth are just the beginning. Look at their backs and shoulders. Every day, these people carry baskets of sulfur weighing from 70 to 90 kilograms out of the crater. They carry this load along steep, slippery paths up to a height of several hundred meters. By the age of 25, a miner's skeleton is deformed beyond recognition. Huge bone calluses and scars grow on their shoulders. The spine is curved, and one side of the body is often higher than the other. This is not just fatigue, it's a physical transformation under the pressure of an unbearable load. At 30, these men move with difficulty, and their gait resembles the movements of very old people whose joints have long since turned to dust. The skin of these people is a separate story. Constant contact with high temperatures and caustic gases turns it into tanned leather. It becomes incredibly rough, loses all elasticity, and is covered with a network of deep, painful cracks into which sulfur dust settles. The face of an Aegean miner is a mask of wrinkles and soot. Due to constant irritation of the eyes by sulfur fumes, the eyelids become red and swollen, and the gaze is perpetually watery. At 20, they look 40, and at 40, they are already considered deeply elderly, if they even live to that age. The most terrifying thing is the contrast. Tourists in expensive respirators and fashionable jackets take selfies against the backdrop of hellish beauty, while nearby semi-naked people pass by, their lungs literally burning out from the inside. For this back-breaking work, in conditions that would kill an ordinary person in a week, they receive about $10 to $15 a day. Aegean doesn't just take their health, it rewrites their anatomy, turning young athletes into hunched, toothless ghosts of the volcano. This is a place where human flesh loses to stone and sulfur, and where old age comes not by the calendar, but with every basket lifted. We have come to the most visually shocking item on our list. If before we talked about pollution or hard labor, here nature itself has set a genetic trap for people, turning their lives into an endless, horror movie. Imagine the picturesque Brazilian village of Araras. Tropical landscapes, bright sun, endless fields all around. It seems like paradise on earth. But if you look closely at the faces of the locals, you'll immediately want to look away. This place is called the Village of Ghosts, or the Village of Melting Faces, and believe me, this is the most accurate and terrifying description of what happens here. Araras is home to the world's largest group of people suffering from a very rare disease, xeroderma pigmentosum. Simply put, these people completely lack the mechanism of protection from ultraviolet radiation. The shield in their DNA that repairs our skin cells after sun exposure is broken. For the residents of Araras, the sun is not a source of life. It is a merciless executioner. Even a few minutes under direct rays trigger an irreversible process of destruction in their bodies. Their skin doesn't just burn. It literally begins to transform into malignant tumors. Look at these frames, but I warn you, this sight is not for the faint of heart. You see people whose faces look as if they have been splashed with concentrated acid. The disease begins with harmless freckles in childhood, but by the age of 10, the skin becomes dry, flabby, and covered with deep, senile wrinkles. And then the worst begins. Tissues begin to decay. Noses, eyelids, lips, they literally melt and disappear, leaving gaping wounds and scars on the face. This is not just premature aging, it is physical decomposition alive under the influence of daylight. Most residents of Araras are farmers, and this is their main tragedy. To feed themselves, they must work in the field under the scorching Brazilian sun that is killing them. Imagine this nightmarish choice. Die of hunger today, or go out into the field and watch your face turn into a mess tomorrow. Due to centuries of village isolation, this defective gene has been passed down from generation to generation, turning Araras into a genetic trap. Here you can meet a 20-year-old man who is forced to wear prostheses for his nose or eyes, and his skin looks as if he spent 100 years in the desert without water or protection. In this village, life begins only after sunset. People go out into the streets when the saving darkness comes, turning Araras into a settlement of night shadows. Look into their eyes. There is no malice in them, only endless resignation to their fate. They know that every dawn brings them a new portion of pain and new scars. This place is the most powerful reminder of how fragile our biology is. In Araras, you understand that your youth and beauty hang by a delicate thread of DNA, which has been ruthlessly cut here. This place doesn't just steal youth. It erases the human form, leaving only naked pain under the bright sky of Brazil. Imagine huge gaping wounds in the earth, resembling anthills. Only instead of ants, tens of thousands of people, men, women, and most terribly children, are scurrying there. They have no excavators, no high-tech equipment, not even elementary respirators. They have only homemade picks, old sacks, and their own hands. They extract cobalt, the blue gold, without which no battery in the world will work. Not in your iPhone, not in your electric car, not in my laptop. Why is this place the absolute leader of our top in terms of the speed of destruction of human appearance? It's all about cobalt dust. This is not just dirt. It is an aggressive chemical agent mixed with radioactive impurities of uranium, which often lies nearby. When a person spends 12 to 14 hours a day in these pits, they literally breathe poison. Cobalt penetrates the lungs, causing hard metal lung disease, an incurable condition where lung tissue turns into scars. Because of this, body tissues stop receiving oxygen, and the aging process accelerates tens of times. Cobalt dust causes terrible skin rashes and ulcers, which locals call cobalt itch. The entire body becomes covered with scars and spots that never heal, turning young skin into a patchwork quilt of scars and inflammations. But the most terrifying thing is the children. In Congo, thousands of children work in these mines from the age of 6 to 7. By the time they should be 15, they already look like small, hunched old people. Constant contact with heavy metals destroys their bones, causes muscle atrophy, and irreversible changes in facial structure. Their growth stops, and facial features become coarse and distorted under a perpetual layer of toxic dust. This is the price of our technological progress. We rejoice in new gadgets, while in Congo, entire generations of people are turning into living dead, deprived of youth, beauty, and a future. There are no pensioners here. In these regions of Congo, aging is a luxury that almost no one lives to experience. Most workers die from cancer, lung failure, or mine collapses before they turn 30. But those who live look as if they have gone through a 100-year war. This is the most powerful visual and moral shock imaginable. We live in a world where your ability to watch this video is provided by people whose faces are literally crumbling into dust under the hot African sun. Which of these places shocked you the most? The village where children change sex, or the melting faces in Brazil? Or perhaps now you will look at your phone differently, knowing the price of its battery? Write your thoughts in the comments.